Americans spend $830 billion every year on shopping. And that's not just all shopping, it's just shopping online. This $830 billion spent on shopping collectively is actually as much as the rest of the world's spending put together, excluding China, because obviously there is a population difference there. It appears that with a figure this large, there must be something in the psyche, in the society, in the American culture that is making shopping particularly problematic in the United States. So in this video, I would like to analyse and consider that it's to do with value and life satisfaction, which, if this is the case, minimalism could definitely help with. And we're not simply talking about the cutting down of shopping, although that's a start. It's clearly not just about shopping alone, but something deeper, something that's causing the shopping. You know, this shopping addiction, this culture of wanting to overspend, overconsume, that may even lead to shopping addiction in some cases. So if we could go deeper than just the shopping, it might be more helpful than actually making rules for shopping, although the no-buy rules and overspending rules and guidelines to help that and curb that are definitely good. Like, they're putting something in a wish list for 6 months before buying it, really thinking about whether you really want it for a long period of time before purchasing it, and even sticking with a one-in, one-out rule so you don't end up with too much stuff in your home. But that still doesn't really stop the spending and the over-consuming unless we get to the root of what is wanting people to buy and spend in the beginning. So let's have a look at that. Well, I can only really equate this to my own experiences, and what I have to say about this is that when I was a little bit younger, I've never really been a shopping addict or somebody who overspends on a gross amount or scale. But I can think about a time when I used to spend more and what was the driver behind me doing that. And I think it was that I was going through life quite superficially, as maybe a lot of us do in the beginning, perhaps in our early 20s. And I was focused a lot on my surroundings, what I wore, what my home was like, and everything on a superficial level. And I think when we start to think more about life satisfaction on a deeper level, our things and the stuff around us becomes less of an issue. Now, that's not to say that I don't like my home to look quite pretty. I like a tiny bit of practical things out on display, but I don't need a lot. I don't need to constantly buy more. I don't need to collect things. I don't need the latest in trend. I'm happy with the stuff that I have, and that is enough, because I know that no amount of buying new stuff is going to make me happy if the happiness isn't from within. We can't buy happiness, and the sooner people realise that, perhaps the less people will over-consume. I believe that the happiness has to come from your own sense of home and health and life satisfaction. So let's talk about what perhaps makes us have a dissatisfaction to begin with, that makes us perhaps wants to obtain life satisfaction. I believe that perhaps when we're younger, when we are growing up within the system, going to schools and things, we are taught a set of life expectations. And if some of us, because many of us don't, fit this model for what is supposed to be the expectations of an average life, we begin to feel dissatisfied and think there's this part that doesn't really fit, and we think we can buy our way into that, buy our way into feeling like we fit this mold. And the truth is, it doesn't fit everybody. You know, some people just weren't meant to have 2.4 children, and a large house might not make them happy, a large family might not make them happy, material things might not make them happy. And I think that if we begin to look outside that, of this maxim that we've been told will make us happy, and is this American dream perhaps, maybe we will actually find contentment. And to me, contentment is equal to happiness. That is going to look different for everyone. For myself, I started to realise that I feel most happy in just living a slow life, getting the time to do what I want to do my little craft hobbies in my home, also travelling, just because I enjoy, as a writer, I enjoy having new experiences. Even though I have this sort of split life of my quiet life at home and then 50% of the time travelling, exploration is also something that fills me with joy and adventure. And because I'm also a little bit of an environmentalist, I enjoy seeing the beauty that nature has to offer and going further afield to see those different environments, i.e. the mountains, hot places such as the desert. I like seeing all these different places, and that is what gives me contentment in life. So for me, it is not about the having and wanting of material things, and more about living small, living tiny, so that I can afford these other things that are more to do with experience rather than stuff. Whilst that is not going to be what makes everybody happy or everybody content, to begin to curb an overspending or consumption problem, I would say do attempt to know by ear, but also think about what you actually love doing other than shopping. Because I think for many people, shopping is just a distraction that we get brought into earlier on in life. Because at the end of the day, what would happen to the economy if we were all told the opposite, to not spend? You know, if we all stop spending on the mass scale that we are doing, the economy would really begin to look quite different and change, but it would adapt. It would adapt in different ways. Other things would have to come into fruition, but they would, because life does always find a way. So we don't have to consume on this mass scale. And as a result of that, I think then if you're not spending all this time shopping, you would be forced to internally reflect upon what other things actually make you happy. And then when you're confronted with that, there might actually be a possibility of really finding contentment and happiness, having a bit more spare time. Because at the end of the day, if you're not constantly having to work to keep up with the spending problem, you would have more time. So this is how I think minimalism could help US consumers or consumers on a global level help curb overspending. Because minimalism is really about thinking about value and things that you truly value in life and getting rid of the rest, and not spending any more on other stuff that doesn't add value. And when you're forced to answer that question, that is the center of minimalism, and that would really truly stop this overspending problem. In the next video, I'm going to discuss differences globally about minimalism and shopping, and comparing American minimalists to other places in the world, and how it's a little bit difficult in some areas compared to others for different reasons. So this is a little bit of a series that I'm doing, a 3-part series, but I also have lots of more different style videos on minimalism and simple living. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!